Prior to Mother's Day, we looked at some of the clues as to what it means to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. Today and for the next few weeks, we're going to focus a little closer on how specifically we're called to share our faith with others in ways that reveal our relationship with the Savior and ultimately serve to point them in His direction. I'm talking about witnessing, but in a helpful, positive, and inviting way, as opposed to witnessing that makes sharing all about the sharer. Several years ago, I had some folks come, and they come periodically. People come periodically to my front door to talk with me about their faith. These folks wanted to talk a little bit about Jesus, and I felt that their witnessing was very heartfelt, but their sharing with me was intended to try and catch me off guard and focused primarily on their agenda, not on God's love for me. The way the conversation went was a major turnoff for me. And I remember thinking that there's got to be better ways to witness than this. So this morning, I would like to try and provide some answers to the question, what can we do to effectively point people in the direction of our Savior? What can we do to witness to people in healthy, inviting ways? Paul, in his letters to the church at Rome, provides answers to these questions. Some time back, I came across a study that suggested that women in a single day use twice as many words as men do. Men, is that true? Maybe I should ask the men. Men, is that true? Is that your experience? The study revealed on the average, men use about 15,000 words a day, while women use close to 30,000. That's a lot of words. So I asked a female colleague how this could possibly be, and you know what she told me? She said, "It's pretty clear to me, women talk twice as much as men because we have to repeat everything we say." Women, is that your experience? Maybe that claim's true. I know I do my share of selective hearing. I'm also aware that we human beings tend to listen to and hear people better who can do something for us or to whom maybe we're indebted. That means if I owe somebody a favor, if I owe somebody some money, my tendency is going to be to listen to what they have to say a little closer. And in some cases, maybe even be more submissive to their ideas because I owe them. That's why Paul writes to the church at Rome and tells the followers of Jesus to owe nothing to anybody, a message we can all benefit from. By staying out of indebtedness to others, we can save ourselves and other people a lot of pain and a lot of grief. Paul is telling those of us who claim to be disciples that when we owe somebody something, that changes the dynamics of the relationship between us and them. Something that can lead us to the point where the relationship might become strained or questionable until the debt is resolved. I remember a truck commercial from 10 or 12 years ago where a guy decides to get his tools back from the neighbor who has borrowed them and failed to return them by pulling his truck up to the neighbor's garage, tying the garage door to his rear fender and pulling off just to get a couple of tools from his neighbor. The commercial ends with the man dragging the garage door down the street behind the truck as he leaves. Owing is the way of the world, and we don't like people to owe us. And if we do, then we expect to be able to collect that debt. That's why both Paul and Jesus warned us about doing it and giving for the purpose of getting back, while it may be the way of the world, especially the financial world, it's not a good basis for discipleship. Theologian Karl Barth noted that love of another ought to be undertaken as the protest against the course of the world. There are things in life we ought to be doing that go against the grain of the world. Jesus undertook such a protest using subversive love, the purest form of love, because it's love freely given to help people become more than they are or more than they would be without that love. This kind of love is given by the giver knowing that there is nothing to gain back from the giving, save the quiet revelation that this is what Jesus requires of those who follow him. It's a love that makes repayment impossible. Jesus once made the comment that people in need will always be with us. I think it's a comment he made with a great deal of sadness. In response to that comment, I once heard a Christian economist say that there is a reason for that. There's a reason for that. Why 3 million children in America continue to go to school hungry. Why so many infirmed elderly die abandoned and alone in nursing homes. Why 25% of the population living on the African continent suffer from AIDS, while the first world nations harbor stockpiles of effective medicine. He said the reason is that none of these groups of people have anything to give back in return. That's why they stay like they are. There is very little return on investments people in those groups are able to make. But God expects followers of Jesus Christ to look at folks, especially folks like that, who are struggling and hurting in very different ways than the world does. I read a story a few years ago about a boss who said to one of his employees, "Your shift is over. It's time for you to go home. I'm here to take your place." The boss said that to the employee. These are strange words for any employee to hear from a boss, but this was no ordinary changing of the guard in the factory line. Now, most of you know the Zapata family, who are members of Bartlett United Methodist Church, and if you know the Zapatas, then you know they're originally from Colombia. Back in their native country on June 24th, 1997, a most unusual event occurred. The boss who spoke these words, "Your shift is over, I'm here to take your place," was an Alberta businessman by the name of Norbert Reinhardt. The employee he spoke these words to was a man by the name of Ed Leonard of Creston, British Columbia, who was on the job at a gold exploration site there in Colombia when rebels took him hostage and held him for a ransom. That was one way rebel forces have always been able to finance their war against the government. They would kidnap prominent people and hold them for ransom. In 1997, there were more than 1,800 kidnapping cases in Colombia. Many victims were never ever informed about the dangers working for some of these high-risk companies. Ed Leonard was one of those who was never informed. For 105 days, Ed Leonard was held in various camps up in the mountains, fed very little, treated very poorly. But on October 6, 1998, Ed Leonard came home. And it happened because when all other efforts failed to free him, Ed's boss, Norbert Reinhardt, offered himself as a hostage in Ed's place. Months later, Reinhardt was released after a large ransom was paid. Jesus says, "What good is it to you if you love only those people who can repay you?" How do we as disciples get to that point in our lives where we can give to others without expecting anything in return? I don't think we can unless we've understood and experienced the depths of God's love for us in Jesus Christ. I don't think we can until we realize that the work of Jesus Christ is a debt that we will never, ever be able to repay. With that in mind, how can we witness in an inviting way? Here's one way. What I want is for you to be able to give something to someone who absolutely cannot repay you. And I want you to be intentional about doing that. I want you to be able to give something to someone and expect absolutely nothing in return. I want you to commit to giving something to someone because you know what God has already given you. What better way to prepare a place for Jesus Christ in the heart of another human being, as well as in one's own life, than forgiving the debt before the debt has ever been incurred?